All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. A massive conflict is brewing in the Middle East. Tensions are sky high. And out of nowhere, the White House floats an idea that sounds more like something out of a gangster film than a foreign policy memo. It's a plan that could have flipped the entire script on global trade.
And there it is, straight from the source. Faced with a crisis in one of the planet's most important shipping lanes, then-President Donald Trump's reaction wasn't just to talk about military options. Nope, he basically asked, why don't we turn this into a business? His big idea? For the U.S. to set up its very own toll system.
So what would that even look like in practice? Well, we're not talking about a simple toll booth on the water. This proposal would mean the United States military taking direct, ongoing control of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that is a colossal military and logistical challenge with some seriously massive geopolitical consequences.
So first up, let's break down the details of this pretty wild economic and military idea.
But you gotta ask, why this one spot? Why is the Strait of Hormuz so incredibly important that it becomes the centerpiece of a global showdown? Let's talk about the Hormuz chokehold.
So if you look at a map, the Strait of Hormuz is this tiny sliver of water tucked between Oman and Iran. It's what's known as a strategic choke point. Basically, if you want to get a ship in or out of the Persian Gulf, you have to go through here. There's no other way.
And the stuff going through that choke point, it's the lifeblood of the global economy. During normal times, a full 1/5, that's 20% of the entire world's oil supply and liquefied natural gas flows through this one narrow channel. It's just staggering.
And to give you a sense of the traffic, on any given day, you've got about 120 ships passing through. Think about that. That's 120 massive tankers and container ships every single day, navigating this critical and now contested waterway.
Now, this whole toll booth idea didn't just pop up out of the blue. It came at a really weird time, right in the middle of this strange contradiction, where the U.S. was declaring victory, but Iran was still very much blockading the strait and launching attacks.
And this created two totally different realities. On one hand, you had the president saying, "We won, they're defeated," but on the other hand, you had reports from the ground telling a completely different story. Iran was still hitting targets with drones and missiles, and they still had a chokehold on the strait.
And this was the official line. The president was basically brushing off Iran's military actions in public, saying it was all just mind games, dropping a couple of mines. He was framing it as an annoyance, not a real threat, all while insisting the U.S. had already won.
But behind that public confidence, there was this incredibly harsh ultimatum. The demands were simple and direct. Iran had to reopen the strait and agree to Washington's terms by Tuesday night. And if they didn't, the consequences were no joke. Attacks on civilian infrastructure. We're talking bridges, power plants, a massive escalation.
Okay, so that was the American position. But what about Iran? How are they seeing the future of the strait? Because they weren't just sitting back and reacting, they had their own plan for what came next. Iran's leadership was making it crystal clear. There was no going back to the way things were. The Speaker of Iran's parliament came right out and said it. The old rules for the waterway are gone. Period.
So Iran's goal wasn't just to survive the conflict and get back to business as usual. No, their aim was to create a whole new system for managing the waterway after the war, a system that would reflect a new reality on the ground.
And Iran's foreign minister even laid out what this new vision looked like. He said the first step should be a new protocol, a new rule book. But, and this is the key part, it would be negotiated only by the countries that are actually on the strait. In other words, no outside powers allowed, a direct message to the U.S.
Which brings us right back to the money, doesn't it? With both sides drawing these hard lines in the sand, let's look at the insane amount of cash that was potentially at stake with this whole toll booth idea.
Now, you have to wonder where the president's idea came from. Well, it might not have been completely out of left field. There were reports floating around that Tehran was already charging some ships a cool $2 million fee for safe passage.
So let's just do the math on that. If the U.S. took over and decided to charge that same $2 million fee, and you multiply that by the 120 ships that go through there every day, well, you're looking at a potential haul of $240 million a day. That is an absolutely mind-boggling amount of money.
And that's really what this all boils down to. You've got this huge clash of wills. On one side, a U.S. ultimatum backed by military might in this wild economic proposal. On the other, Iran pushing for a whole new regional power structure.
So the big question is, in a high-stakes game like this, who's the one that actually gets to write the new rulebook for the world's most important waterway?